Hello, everyone. It's Sherry at the Fledge. Welcome to another episode of Every Damn Day. I'm sitting up in my office studio today. I've got my headset on. I've got my art in the background. I've got brown hair and brown eyes. I'm always moving around too much, I guess. But that's what you may or may not see on the screen if you're watching. And if you um, have audio, then you'll hear me talk about stuff like that too. I've got a 517 Living t-shirt on to support local, support our friends. We love everyone over there, Sarah and all. So enough of that, I think. Today on the show, we have our newish good friend. Uh-oh. Oh, there we go. Your video wasn't on for a second. How you doing today, Vicki?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for having me today.
We're happy to have you. So you have busy days on Friday, I understand.
Oh, somewhat, yes. It's my normal leadership meeting day. So it starts out with a lot of tactics and process and procedure. So I'm really grateful to be in such a creative space. This feels really good.
It looks good. Where are you at? You want to tell everyone? I know where you're at.
So I'm at the Fledge, former sanctuary, beautiful, creative space. There's art surrounding me. I'm sitting here. I identify as female. I have light brown hair to my shoulders. I am Caucasian and hazel eyes. I wear black glasses or black frame glasses. I have on a gray jacket today with a black turtleneck underneath. I was dressing for the cold weather because in Michigan, you never know what season it's going to be any day of the week. And I am wearing a big smile because I'm happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you. I've got a big old smile on as well. So let's jump into you. Tell us about yourself.
Gosh, that's such a big question, and I'll do my best to tell you a little bit about me. So I was born in Montreal, Canada. I was raised in what's called the West Island, where there are predominantly Anglophones. Quebec is majority French speakers, which are referred to as Francophones, and there is still 11% of English speakers left in the province of Quebec in Canada, and my family is English speaking. And so I was educated in both French and English, and I graduated from Concordia University in Montreal with a bachelor in political science. I left Montreal in the early 90s and moved to the UK, where I spent the next 18 years of my life. I furthered my education there at the National School of Government and the Open University, and I had an interesting and amazing sort of span of life. I had my children there. I worked for national developers for properties, residential homes, and I worked for the British government, where I was responsible for school procurement for 22,000 schools. So that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that was very interesting. Yeah. So let's stay with the UK for a second, if you don't mind. What do you mind if you tell us like the kind of the years that you were there, or is that?
Sure. I'll do the quick math. So I was there for 18 years, and I guess I left there in 2010. So back that up. So I guess 92 is when I went over. So yeah, I spent my whole adult formation years there. I had my first attempt at a marriage there. Sorry, that sounds awful, but it's true. So yes, I got married. I had my two amazing children there. In fact, my son still lives in England, and my daughter is here in the US with me. And so they are 25 and 21, and I just adore them. And, I became a first-time homeowner there. I became a first-time mother there, first-time wife there. I had so many firsts. It's where I really learned how to bring myself into the universe as a wholly independent individual.
That's such an awesome experience. So in 92, they weren't in the European community yet, right? They were just starting to form that, I think.
Well, the European Union, they were part of the European community because those are different
Wow.
kind of
Yeah.
treaty acts. And so, yeah, there was a lot of change that occurred whilst I was there. And it was interesting to see where the rubs occurred. And some of them were from using imperial measures to metric measures. There was a rub. But I mean, that happens here in the US, right? Like nobody wants to talk millimeters or liters.
But it's so easy.
It's true. It's true. I mean, but in the UK, we still talk about weighing in stones. So like, you know, when you tell someone you weigh 10 stone, that sounds like an interesting thing, but what does that mean? And there's 14 pounds to a stone, right? So
Yeah.
I was forever doing math while I was there. But, you know, I really, although I grew up in Montreal, and I love Montreal as a city. It is got a beautiful, eclectic mix of ethnicity and language and culture, and it is really an amazing place to be able to experience life from multiple facets. Britain was a little more homogenous in terms of British culture as such, and that was shifting and changing while I was there, and it was interesting to witness. Because I came from a space of diversity and then to move into a space that didn't have as much. And that might have been where I was living in the UK. I was in the southeast. I lived in predominantly Essex, just outside of London. And then there started to be this shift in population and what languages people spoke. And there was like this sense of resistance, which was new to me because I grew up in an open space where I didn't really know that it was a thing. I didn't know diversity was a thing. I actually only learned the name when I came to the US. And I don't mean to say that I don't understand what diversity is, but as a concept to go and acquire, because I was surrounded by it my whole life.
Yeah. So like the fish doesn't know they're in water, right?
Right. But when you take the fish out of water and then someone says, you need water, you say, well, naturally.
So, let's fast forward a little bid.
Mm-hmm.
It says Habitat for Humanity, Capital Region. We'll throw that in there. It didn't quite fit. What'd you do? You came back here, or did you start working for Habitat for Humanity immediately?
No, thank you for that question. You know, our life stories are unique, of course. And while in the UK, I told you I had my first attempt at a marriage. And I laugh at that now because it's so long ago. The bitterness is gone. But I was there 18 years, and I have this deep sense of having experiences and adventures with my children, and my goals were to show them different sort of corners of the world. And that was in place of getting them things. I didn't think things were the greatest goals for me and my children. So we traveled a lot. And so I'm getting to answer your question, but I have to tell you this bit first, because what led me to the US was a trip to Cairo. So I had taken my children Egypt to be able to experience and climb the pyramids and ride camels and walk the Cairo Museum, which is endless. And whilst we were there, we met many people from the United States who were military. And fast forward a few years, but I met a gentleman there who was at the time deployed and ultimately ended up coming to the US to be with him. So that's what brought me to the US. So then once here, I had a little bit of a bump coming into the US because while you go through immigration process and apply for your green card, there's this downtime where you're not allowed to work. And so I thought, gosh, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm quite a busy person and I'm always doing something. So to be told that I can't, I thought, okay, well, that doesn't mean I can't do anything. It means I just can't get paid to do anything. So off I went and started volunteering in places. And I was working at the Area AIDS Network Center. I was working, I was volunteering everywhere I could. And I was working at various food pantries. And then I started kind of network. And then from there, I started to realize I was going to be moving towards the job market. And that's when it became evident that my attendance with the National School of Government was not a recognized, accredited institution here. And so I said, oh, that's interesting. What does that mean? Because I have the knowledge, but even if the paper doesn't mean anything, the information doesn't go away, which is a strange kind of concept. In any case, I had to go back to school. So I went back and got my MBA here in Michigan. And after graduating with my MBA, I went back out to the workplace. In fact, I started that during my downtime and then finished it whilst I got my first job. And what I did was I only applied to 4 places, because when you move to a new country, it's very difficult to know who to trust, what names you should migrate towards. Everything's different and new, and I had no idea. So I went to names I knew. I went to the American Red Cross. I went to brands that were global. And so I applied. They hired me immediately. I mean, I was starting to think that getting a job wasn't really that big a deal, but I realized that I was very lucky to have the education and experience that I had, and they accepted me. And I was there for a year and a half, and then I was invited to throw my hat into the arena for Habitat for Humanity as they were searching for a new executive director.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. That is. So did you, when you were volunteering, did you ever meet Jimmy Carter?
I did not, no. But, he spoke at an event I was at not so long ago. And I'll tell you what I loved the most. Jimmy Carter is speaking. Rosalind, his wife, is standing next to him because they are just a solid partnership. And, he's former president, and there's usually some respect with that position. And he was talking, and like most spouses, they can finish each other's sentences and things, and that she did for sure. So he was addressing an audience of about, I don't know, maybe there were about 5,000 or 7,000 of us. And he would say something. She goes, "No, that's not right." She would correct him. So I thought that was a beautiful sign of a solid partnership and relationship between them, and I really appreciated it.
I love that. Hey, we've got Chris Pruitt is in the crowd right now, and he's a homeless advocate and used to be homeless, and now he's housed, or houseless, as he likes to say. What's homelessness or houselessness like in England versus the U.S.?
I really appreciate that question, and I'm not sure that I'm really fully informed enough to provide a solid answer, but I can speak from my experience. Homelessness is prevalent everywhere I've been in this world, and I like to say that I've traveled to a lot of places. That said, the sliver of the industry that I worked in that worked juxtaposed to any level of homelessness was really in what was called social housing in the UK. And so they have some different programs to be able to support those who are shelter vulnerable. And so they have what we call council houses in England. So the government creates housing, and then folks will rent it from the government. In the Thatcher years, the government sold off the government-owned properties to be able to generate income, and that created a shortage in the market, which actually ended up agitating the problem of housing security, because those who could not afford to buy were kind of stuck. And so they started introducing a concept which was almost a rebranded version of affordable housing, and they were calling it social housing. And then they started to introduce new policies so that for-profit developers would introduce affordable housing into their development. So I believe the mix was like a 12-to-1 ratio. So you start building anything over 12 units, then you have to introduce social housing into that development. But the UK was not immune to NIMBY, the whole not in my backyard kind of stuff. I mean, there's bias, and there's a lot of bless you. There's bias, and then there are clearly apparent oppositions to introducing social housing into the different developments, because you'll have housing is extremely expensive in the UK. Land is very limited. So you have very small parcels of land where you will build compact houses and sell them at a great rate per square foot. And with that being said, the affordable houses come into the mix, and the developers are saying, well, it costs me as much to build those houses as it does the others, and then the return is that much less. So developers are looking at it as impacting and pulling from their bottom line, and then the social need is saying, well, it's the cost of doing business, and you can still produce this at greater volume than a little, maybe even like a little Habitat for Humanity might. But the problem exists there, and I've witnessed it, but I'm sorry that I don't have a better answer to offer.
I think that's very useful information for Chris, and thank you for the question, Chris. Let's talk about Habitat for Humanity here in the Capital Region.
Yes, thank you. I have been there for 7 years now, and it's been a real journey. So when I started at the organization, it was a wholly different organization, and it was kind of knocking out housing and some ramps. And the ramps was being, those are accessibility ramps. So folks who have limited mobility can access their homes. And so those were the dominant programs in the in that organization. And they had what are called the restores. Those are retail environments where donated home goods and furniture, building materials are sold to produce income for the organization. And so they had 2 stores at that time, one on Benjamin Drive in Lansing and one in Hazlitt. And Hazlitt was hemorrhaging a loss. It was in a bad way, and Lansing wasn't producing. And I had just sort of asked myself, is it really worth having sort of a dozen people working all year to produce like $2,000? I mean, that didn't make sense to me, right? So I had to review everything. And my first role there, and this is not one of my pride points, was, the board delegates some of their top priorities when new leadership comes in. One of my top priorities was to do a right sizing of the workforce. And that was a very difficult task, because what I saw was we were over-resourced with human resources, and the programs were, some of them redundant, and some of them were, they needed life breathed into them. The stores weren't performing. And so I had to do workforce reduction. I did almost 80% workforce reduction. I took the whole team down to 4 people and started again. But it's like a plant that has great potential. And sometimes you have to cut it right down to the base so that it'll bloom beautifully for years to come. And so I was hoping you'd like my plant reference, Jerry.
I do love the plant reference. I think in the UK they call it redundant, right? People get redundant.
They're made redundant.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I had to create redundancy in my workforce, and with that, I had to do an assessment of all the programming. I had to do a real sort of scale back on the stores. And ultimately what happened, Jerry, is that I did close the Hazlitt store. It was costing us to run. It was never going to catch up on the initial investment. The carrying costs and operating costs of that unit on its own was too difficult, too deep a hole to get out of. And so I either had to allow for it to continue hemorrhaging to the point that, the body no longer lives, or I have to cut it off, which is what I did. And so with that, I focused my energy into the Lansing store, and started with staff training, and started with reorganizing of the actual space, made it shoppable, which sounds strange because stores have to be structured in a shoppable way. People have to understand how to navigate it and how to find things. And so we moved through that. And then we started talking about workflows and processes and all the great things and standards. And that was glorious to me. And so that really started performing. And I thought, this is great. And it was turning around. And then we started really working on our programming. And so what our programming at Habitat looks like is we are, our mission is to mobilize individuals and communities to be able to deliver safe, decent, affordable housing. And that doesn't mean we go and build houses for people, which a lot of people seem to believe that Habitat for Humanity goes out, takes their hammers, they start whacking like bunches of wood together with a bunch of smiling, happy volunteers, and they get free materials and they give houses away. That is all wrong, 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 wrong. And if I could just use this moment to demystify that, then so be it. So let it be said that Habitat does not build houses and give them away to poor people. That is not the right concept. What Habitat does is Habitat creates affordable housing, and that is through, and it's safe, decent, affordable housing. And what that looks like sometimes is not necessarily building or rehabbing a house for low to moderate income people to purchase with an affordable mortgage. It is also critical home repairs. We have a lot of vulnerable people who live in homes that are falling down around them. And my number one client in the critical home repair program is an over 65 white widowed female who usually has a disability, who is living on state income, state pension or disability pension. So there's usually about $14,000 a year annual income going into that home. The problem is that the home is usually old housing stock that may have once been a part of a nice little street scene or community, and they have lost their spouse in this time and have this house that is fully paid for. But the running cost of the home, in addition to being able to pay the utilities and their food and their medical sort of obligations, there's usually not enough money to make ends meet. So what we see a lot of the time is they don't have the physical capacity to repair their home because they're frail and vulnerable in their own selves, and they don't have the money to pay someone else to do it. So what happens is the house starts to deteriorate. And what that does is it increases the deterioration rate of the human being that lives inside, because now you've got cold air coming in, you've got water coming in through a roof, you've got maybe mold growing up a wall. You know, all these terrible things are being introduced into a space that's supposed to keep people safe. And Before I go on to the other programs, I just want to say right now in this space, that is the thing that has made me stay up at night during this whole COVID-19 pandemic, because the message is stay home, stay safe. And that is an impossible request for so many of the people that we at Habitat for Humanity serve on a daily basis. So I talked about affordable housing. I talked about the critical home repair, and we have a RAMP program, and that is the accessibility program I mentioned earlier. And we're knocking out about 35 a year. Could we do more? Maybe if we had more volunteers to help. Maybe if we could have a full-time carpenter on staff to be able to oversee that program. But we have that need all day, every day. And you know, Jerry, it's not just people who are in wheelchairs. We have people who are at end of life who having an accessibility ramp is the one thing that keeps them in their home. If they have the ramp, it's the one thing that lets them out. It's like a bridge to freedom for them to see their family maybe for the last time, go out on one last excursion, go and do something, you know, instead of just being isolated at home. And what we see is there is a gap sometimes in the healthcare system and what the social needs are for individuals, because if you were involved in a terrible accident, and we've had this happen. We've had people who've been double amputees from an accident. We've had people who fell off a boat and broke their leg in all sorts of places and had to have surgeries and stuff. And what happens is their home isn't equipped for accessibility because they didn't anticipate having mobility issues. There was an accident that occurred and a sudden change in their life circumstance. And when they're clinically discharged from the hospital, there is a problem if you can't get into your home. And then they'll call around trying to get a ramp. And so then they'll call us, and we may not be able to respond immediately because we're not an emergency service for that, although we try our best to help those who are in urgent need. And the hospital discharges them because there's no clinical need left, but then they can't get home. So what do we do with them? We can't just let them hang out in the lobby at the hospital until a ramp gets built. So we got to figure it out. You know? So we do go ahead and we do figure it out. Sometimes it feels like my hair's in flames because I'm trying to know what to do next. But, you know, we get them in, but we understand the importance. And I don't know if that is really something that folks on a daily, weekly, or lifetime basis would ever consider until it happens to them or someone they love.
So let me let you take a breath for a second, because you just told us a ton of stuff. And I want to tell a quick story, and then I'm going to ask you for a website. So, anyone out there listening, I used to be a subcontractor with LEAP, the Lansing Economic Area Partnership. And one time, as one of our outings, we volunteered for Habitat for Humanity, and we all went and painted a house. And I'll tell you what, that was a huge team building exercise. It was so much fun. We got to interact with the person who house it was, so it was very rewarding. And you guys made that very easy and very safe and very smooth. And if you get a chance to even take your whole company on an outing, don't go spend stuff on, some BS thing. Go do some work for our community, make our community stronger, and volunteer with Habitat for Humanity, because it is very fulfilling in all kinds of ways. How is that?
I love it.
So how do we do that, though? What's the website or something?
Well, Habitat for Humanity Capital Region's website is really easy. Do the 3 W's. habitatcr.org. So that would be Habitat, HABITAT, CR.org. And CR stands for Capital Region, so habitatcr.org. And we do still need volunteers right now. And it is super important that that anybody who's listening, watching knows that we take safety very seriously. The protocols that we have introduced will keep you safe from COVID exposure. We screen everybody in. We keep you as reasonably apart as we can. It's hard to work together side by side when you're apart. And so we still try and do that. We do enforce the mask rule on site. We don't deviate from that. It is important. But we have people who need help, and we are struggling. We are only few, and we have such a huge demand. And people have been afraid to come out and volunteer, and I understand that. But we have had some volunteers who said at the beginning of the pandemic, we know you need us, and they stepped up. And we've had 13 specific, consistent volunteers throughout the course of the last year who've given over 2,000 of their hours to help us. And we have built 1 brand new house and rehabbed 3 in this time, and done multiple critical home repairs and built ramps during this time. Ooh, I see a question.
It's from Dawn, our friend over at Ellie's place. What type of things would volunteers do, and when do you need them?
Hi, Dawn. Thanks for the question. I really appreciate it. That's a great question. So we have a plethora of different tasks and opportunities for volunteers, because we like to meet volunteers at their level of ability and comfort. So if I say, hey, Jerry, let's go, we're all going to build a house today, and you're doing the roofing, and you might say, Vicki, I am not going on that roof, not in a million years of Sundays. And I'll say, okay, so what we do is when folks reach out to us to volunteer, we have conversations with them first to ensure that there are areas of interest and areas of dislikes, or just whatever you need, I'll do. We have an understanding of what their comfort level is. And then we start populating the days with those volunteers. So to be more specific, to answer Don's question, it may be hanging siding, it could be hanging drywall, it could be landscaping, it could be installing doors, it may be painting the interior house, it may be coming into our restore and helping us. We receive items all day. They have to be processed. They need to be inspected, cleaned, prepared, priced, put on the shop floor. We have admin tasks that we need help with, data entry, envelope stuffing, photocopying, filing, all of the general operations that occur in office. You name it, we've got it. Whatever you can do and you have time to do, we can put it to good use and make a solid difference in someone's life from just a couple hours of somebody's donated time.
And it might be at a more reasonable time, Dawn, than what I'm making you do tomorrow night. So Dawn's volunteering for us tomorrow night at like 11 o'clock or something like that. So thank you, Dawn.
I'll take first shift, Dawn. You could come and work on the house first and then come on over here.
So let's talk about some other things. I think you got a couple other things going on. Some coaching, some writing, some authoring, let's talk about that for a little bit.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting because when I talk about Habitat, I can get right into the housing track, and I can kind of talk about that all day, every day, because that is not only my job, but one of my passions. But many of us have multiple passions, and I have a personal goal of being able to help shore up and help young women rise to be successful, empowered, strong individuals who present themselves in the world in a way that is generous and kind. And one of the ways I do that is by volunteering to be a coach for Girls on the Run. And I adore that volunteer role. So I am asked for volunteers, and I am a volunteer. So lead by example. And it's a running program that is built solidly on empowering young girls. And the pandemic has presented many hurdles, but what better group to overcome a hurdle than a running group? And so we have been able to create some safeguarding, and we are doing outdoor events. Normally these groups are held in a gymnasium from a school, but we have created a departure from the school system because the schools have been opening and closing in response to COVID, and it's very difficult. It is much easier to keep the girls safe, separated, and moving outside and out from in front of a screen, because they have spent so much time in front of screens over the last year. And so I feel motivated. And I've had many wonderful things happen in my life, different sort of recognitions and honors and whatever. But one of the things I hold highest in regard in terms of accomplishment is a note that I had from one of the girls I coached a few years ago. And it said, "Coach Vicki, thank you. You've made me stronger. You believed in me, and you're a fast runner." Of course, I always kind of remember that last slide the most because, she was being kind to me. But the truth of the matter is, that she was able to articulate in her 8-year-old self the impact that the program had on her. And I was so grateful for that. And I felt like I was able to help facilitate that for her. So it's not my credit to own, but I was part of the process, and I was so incredibly moved. So again, it's a motivator to volunteer when you know that you could be making a difference in someone's life. She was not particularly a strong runner, but she was an amazing human being who was incredibly caring to the other girls in the group, and she tried her best. And when there's something about when people are trying their best, it really makes me emote. Like I can't watch a version of The Voice or something without crying, because I'm like, oh my gosh, they're singing their heart out. Or when I see the kids running, I'm like, oh, she's running her heart out. And even my kids, when they were in their school plays, and even when my son wore pink leotards and a fluffy neck piece to be a buzzard in a school play, I was crying because I was so proud of his buzzardness, Oh, he'd be so embarrassed if he heard me right now. But
I am a huge empath like that too. Every Olympics I cry the whole way through. I get it.
Thank you.
There's a young lady named Shayna Allen that I'm going to introduce you to after this, or you might actually know her. I'm sorry, but she runs an organization called Tomboy, and the basic premise is that she was an athlete. Most women, young girl athletes start to drop out in 8th, 9th grade. They do it at twice the rate as the boys do. And if you look at the CEOs in the Fortune 500, 97% of them played athlete or were athletic through high school. So she's trying to keep girls engaged with sports. You guys should meet.
Oh, I feel like I've got a new sort of soul sister in my future. So please do connect us, Jerry. Yes, I'm motivated already. I need to learn about this. In fact, I'm just going to step out and go Google Tomboy. But thank you.
I wouldn't be surprised if someone's forwarding this to her right now.
So
yeah.
I just wanted to build on that a little bit because you mentioned earlier about my writing and something there. And it's kind of a really interesting segue because I had another really powerful moment in this last week that reduced me to tears, but they were joyful tears. And it also speaks to sports. So I was very much an athlete at school. And I represented my school, and I got the national gold medal for canoeing in Canada in '86. And yeah, I love sports. I'm very competitive, competitive with myself as well. So if I go out and play golf, I'm like never good enough, but that's golf. But I had a coach in high school who was a beacon for me in so many ways. He was an incredible human being as a start. He was strong and loyal, and he believed in his team, every single one of us. And he was my basketball coach, and he was my volleyball coach. He was also my practice partner for badminton because he gave me some good running. He was a good player. He coached my PE class too for a couple of years. So with that, it was, all of the sports that you play. And the Canadian sports were a little different to American. We didn't play American football. We played lacrosse, and we played soccer, and we played, tennis and stuff. And I never played tennis, sorry, but I saw people playing tennis when I was playing soccer. But with that being said, I truly did appreciate the value of what a coach brings, because here we are almost 35 years later, and I still connect with this man, right? And this is a segue to the writing piece, because I had I had some things happen in my life that have caused me to grow in ways that were maybe unhealthy, and I grew in ways that were very positive, and I think that's balance. But the ways that were unhealthy were about self-depreciation and never being good enough and not having a sense of belonging, and it was because I had some things that had just happened to me, and yet I didn't know how to articulate them, because I had some very traumatic events occur as I was a really young child. And so I kept them in. And once you internalize something bad that happens to you, you act out in different ways, and you grow in different ways. And like a plant will turn to light and grow. I didn't necessarily have the light to turn and grow to. And so it was hard to blossom, if you know what I mean. So I realized as I got older and more educated and more experience with the world and had more sort of supportive help, that some of these what I'll call afflictions were from my trauma. Like there wasn't actually something wrong with me. Something had happened to me, and I did belong. I just didn't think I did. And so I was removing myself when really I should have stayed, and it was all about self-confidence, which is interesting because anyone who knows me and has known me my whole life says, she's so confident. She's an extrovert, but I'm also like a fantastic actress, it seems. And so what I realized is that I had this secret inside of me, and it was forcing me to be something I didn't like. And only as I got old enough to understand how to manage it did I realize that letting it out was really the best way forward. And so in full frankness, I had childhood sexual trauma that I had to deal with. And it took until I was 47, 48 years old until I was finally able to offer disclosure. That disclosure resulted in sort of, prosecution and everything. And so it is a huge, huge milestone in my life. And I had never in my life felt more whole than when I released something from myself. And that was the secret. And I kept saying to myself, gosh, That's a long time to carry that. And meanwhile, you had all of the NASAR trials going on in the media in our local market in the Lansing area for a long time, and various accusations. And so I felt like almost like it was like a Dolby stereo messaging all the time. And I thought, gosh, these people are carrying these secrets and they're trying to let them out and they're not being heard. And I thought, how do you undo that? And I thought, I am just not powerful enough to protect everybody. I want to be, but I'm not. But what can I do? So I wrote a children's book called The Itchy Secret. And the book is based on a lion named Lou. And Lou emotes with his mane. And so the book is built on the journey of being able to release an uncomfortable, itchy secret. And I'm calling it itchy secret because children know what itchiness feels like and the uncomfortable and the discomfort and the squishiness that comes with an itch. Whereas if I said, oh, guilt and shame, I mean, that's not going to fall on children's ears very well. So I wrote this book and Lou goes through this journey and the reader never knows what the secret is. But it does say that, I'm Lou, I'm a lion, and it says, I like to play all day long and all this kind of stuff. And then all of a sudden it says, and something happened to me. And he had this big shocked mane. And he says, and I was told not to tell. And then goes through this sort of series of emotions. And the idea is keeps rolling through the emotions that keep him from playing with his friends and makes him feel bad and makes him feel sad and makes him feel mad, but not knowing, and then keeps moving forward until Lou, who has to find an adult that Lou trusts. And that's kind of the message is I must find someone that I trust. And so what do I do? What do I say is kind of the chant that goes through the book. And then Lou decides to disclose to a teacher. And I chose a teacher because Lou kind of pontificates, teacher, parents, coach, and then maybe friends' parents. And Lou chooses a teacher. And I chose a teacher for a lot of reasons. Teachers are mandated reporters. So if kids can tell a teacher, then at least they're going to kind of make sure that message goes further and help. And also because I wanted to kind of curb the idea of going to a friend, because investigators have told me that children often tell their friends instead of adults. And that is my true experience too. That's my lived experience. So I wanted to get over that. So I directed towards a teacher, a trusting teacher. I know that right now, especially in the pandemic, school, online school too, is one of the only outlets some kids are getting to the outside world if they're being at home all day. So I was trying to guide this and massage it so that it can be relevant right now. Anyway, so I published this book, and it's in the libraries here, capital area libraries, and I got honored. I got recognition from the legislature, and they presented me with my whole sort of day at the Capitol, and that was amazing for helping children in Michigan. And here's the thing. This is the email that I got from my coach this week that reduced me to tears. He sent me a message, and he said, Vicki, I bought 4 copies of your book. Now, bear in mind, he's in Montreal. And he said, one for my daughter, who's an elementary school teacher, one for his uncle's granddaughter, who's a little one. And he took a copy to our 2 local libraries, like my hometown. He took them there and he got them in the library. I had no idea he was doing all of this, right? And he did that. And then he sent me a picture of my book sitting on the display stand in the local library. And then he stood next to the book with great pride and sent a picture, and then a picture of himself in front of the library. And I was moved for a number of reasons. Number one, first of all, that he's just an amazing human being. Number 2, that he felt it important enough to want to do that for me, and then felt the message was strong enough to be in that public place and made sure that it was, and then kind of said, I am so incredibly proud of your accomplishment. And so here's my coach still, years after, still affirming my performance, which was moving.
I am teared up. I can't help it because of a couple of things. First of all, um, I want to acknowledge. I'm sorry that that happened to you, and thank you for telling me us here today, but also basically broadcasting something to everybody that is in a way that is impactful and helpful. So kudos to you for that. And then the other thing is, it sounds like this is an amazing book. So everyone, it's in the library, but if you can buy it, go buy The Itchy Secret. Is it
The
on
Itchy Secret.
Amazon, or
It
how
is
do
on
we
Amazon.
purchase?
Yep. The Itchy
Okay.
Secret, author Vicki Hamilton Allen, with Marissa Thaler Tawney as my illustrator. She's amazing. She's local. And you can get it on Amazon. You can get it at Barnes and Noble. They're not holding it in store right now, but you can get it online. So please go out, buy it today. Buy one for your local school. Get a copy in there. And if there's anybody that could benefit a group of children from a virtual reading, I would be happy to do that personally, or provide a book for someone to do so. It's such an important message. It's written in a way that is not offensive or scary for children. And it is, Lou is such a lovable character that everybody wants him.
Do you have you done a reading for like Tajmika with the Firecracker Foundation or any of that?
I have not, because I've been working with Smalltalk to be able to develop worksheets, because there needs to be some sort of transition or vehicle to try and do a debrief in a safe way, because just kind of reading the book plants a seed, but trying to move it to the next step would be sort of a little bit more intentional. And so I know Tashmika, I love her. And what I will do is, when I have it in a more solid kind of kit, I will definitely be giving her a knock.
All right. So you're going to be late for your lunch with Ariana if we're not careful. And I'm saying Ariana's name. So she was, her name also got mentioned yesterday on the show. And I have a suspicion that if I say it 3 times, that she'll come on the show. She was supposed to sign up. She will.
Oh, I'll make sure. I'm seeing her shortly. I'll let her know.
Yeah, go twist her arm. So, the Habitat for Humanity has a mission. You're running. I'm sorry, Girls Who Run.
Girls on the Run. GOTR is the acronym.
Okay, GOTR. That has a mission. Your book, you're on a mission. What do you do every damn day to push all of these missions forward? Or is it really just one mission that you're pushing forward, that you articulate in a, I don't know, combined way?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, if I had to create my own mission statement, it is to continue to stay committed to making something better. It doesn't even matter what it is. I don't care. I just got to make something better. And, I'm not powerful enough to make people better, but I can inspire. I can lead by example. I can just be committed to doing something good each day and trying to create positive change.
That's, and what do you do every damn day to make that happen?
I try and be intentional, at least more intentional, about looking after myself so that there's more of me to be able to help others. I neglected myself for so long, and now it's kind of my regiment. I have got to, I've got to run a 5K. I started this thing. Who knew how long this pandemic would go on? In the beginning of the pandemic, I said, I'm going to do a 5K every work day until the end of the pandemic. Well, 8 months in, I was like, my gosh, I feel like Forrest Gump. This has got to stop. So I sort of said, okay, I'm going to modify that goal, because who knows, this could go on forever. So, but what it did is it disciplined me, and I was making sure I did that every damn day. And so that became part of my being. So every day I do something specifically for myself to be able to have the energy to be there for others.
Yeah, I love it. So we daisy chain the shows together. And yesterday on the show, we had Erin, who owns the Abundance Cafe, not health food, but healthy meals and all of that. her question to you, and I'm sorry if this is a little redundant, I'm not sure, is what's the most transformative thing that's ever happened to you? You know, and I don't know, that's a huge question. So however you'd like to answer that.
I love that question. And I could probably answer with 12 different answers because I've been so fortunate to move countries and have major, beautiful experiences. But the one thing that was so transformational to me was when I had enough courage to open my sort of self in a space of being the most vulnerable and being so worried. It was like I opened my heart and soul, and all I thought is that daggers were going to fly in when I started telling the truth about my childhood experience, because I felt like it was such an ugly thing, and I felt it was part of me. And when I opened my soul and started releasing that truth, instead of being attacked, what I found was people filled that space with love. And so the most transformative thing was releasing the truth into the universe. And instead of being beaten down by it, I was completely surrounded and filled with love. And that was the first time in my life that I felt whole. And that was amazing. And I know what that felt like. I remember the moment, and that was probably the most powerful moment in my life to date.
Yeah. I want to, Mona's such a great fan of the show and always commenting, and I want to reiterate this, what she's saying too. Vulnerability is strength. The path to strength is through vulnerability. And I commend you for doing this. And it's so important because you might be helping so many people that are struggling. So thank you so much.
You are welcome.
So tomorrow on the show, so we've got this big We Are the Fledge fundraiser tomorrow. We're going to do an every damn day, a little bit different. So my good friend David Silva Smith will be interviewing me on every damn day in the same exact format that I torture everybody else with. So what question would you like to pass to me for tomorrow?
Well, Jerry, having met you and being in your glorious environment here, it's very clear to me that you are a very creative person. But what I want to know, and the question that I hope is posed to you tomorrow is, as a creative mind, how do you stay focused on a daily basis?
I won't answer till tomorrow, but I'm going to love answering that question. How do you stay focused on the daily basis? I mean, you got the girls, the habitat, the books, the probably other things.
Yeah,
how do you stay inspired and focused?
Well, inspired, I always want to do more, do better, do always, focused, that is solid calendar. Like I have a schedule and I'm never on it. Everyone knows I'm late for most things. And Ariana will tell you shortly that I'm late, but everything is booked out. But when I show my calendar to other people, they're like, how do you fit all that stuff in? Because there's like 75 things every day. And I'm like, these are the things I do, but I calendar them. So it keeps me sort of accountable, and I go through them every day and try and work my way through everything.
So the power of a list.
Right. List makers rule.
Yeah. I have lots of lists. You can probably see them behind you if we zoomed in. We got to probably scoot it up because we don't want Ariana to miss her lunch with you.
Mm-hmm.
What is happiness to you, and are you happy?
Happiness is altruism. I am moved miles when I see someone doing something for somebody with no expectation of return, when they do some sort of secret little thing to make someone's life better and are not seeking credit or recognition. That to me brings me such great joy. I can't even begin to describe it. And there have been few occasions where something just wonderful happens to me, like the coach. He had no benefit in doing that, right? And he did that, and he made my day, my week, maybe even my month with that. So Happiness to me is altruism.
I love it. As a director of a nonprofit, you'll understand this maybe more than some other people. You do a good deed and you need the photos on social media because you need the volunteers and you need to feed this stuff. And Does that bother you? It bothers me, is why I'm asking.
I
Now I'm in a
really,
counseling session.
I know, I appreciate that question. And here's the truth of the matter. I understand why, but I struggle with a lot of the angst that comes with the concept of volunteering. Volunteering would be way easier if we said the rules are that you volunteer and don't tell anyone, and we won't tell anyone. But that's not how it works, because the expectation is we want to volunteer. We want you to put a banner outside the house that's bigger than the house so everyone knows that we're there. And then we want you to print t-shirts at your expense and put our names on it. And I'm sounding very ungrateful, and that's not how I mean to sound. But when we're talking about altruism and we're talking about volunteerism, I feel that those two should come together as one. And yet I think we sometimes get lost in the corporate kind of obligations that come through corporate social responsibility agendas and stuff. And I just feel like there's got to be a different way. And I want to celebrate everybody for everything wonderful that they do. Of course I do. But what I also want to do is kind of remind folks that you're in this to help somebody have a better way of life or a better standard of living. And the volunteering is the conduit to that. The volunteering is not the experience, right? It's the conduit. And that sometimes is a little bit of a logger jam, because you kind of get to this and then it's like, well, I didn't have fresh donuts when I arrived. I didn't have coffee. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, I'll make sure to do that. But it's just that, wow, okay, that caught me off guard.
So what gives you hope?
Kindness. It sits back in that altruistic space, but I witnessed during this pandemic, a lot of people felt helpless and were sometimes almost paralyzed in a sense of fear. And then I had some others who reached out to me saying, I know people need us. How can we help? Because they felt like they were motivated to do. And, like in crisis, there are some people that do kind of pull back, and there's some people run into it. Look at our firefighters or law enforcement. I mean, they're running into danger to be able to create some sort of safety or to reduce the fire or something. And so a lot of times volunteers are those folks who want to run to crisis to remedy it. And I am so inspired by that. And what that looks like is different for every circumstance. And like whether it's distribution of food at the food bank, whether it's helping to fix somebody's roof because they're staying in their home to be safe, but the water is dripping down on their head, or whether it's mowing someone's lawn because they can't get in or out of their house. Like all of those acts of kindness are amazing. And Bob Hoffman with Epiphany Now, I mean, he makes me cry because he's always doing something awesome, and he showcases people like that every day too. And so I hope I hold on to, and kindness reminds me of hope.
Yeah. Did you know Bob was on the show 2 days ago?
He was? How come I didn't get to come on with him?
I don't know, because I need to fill 150 more spots.
Okay.
Yeah, do you guys one at a time. Did we forget to talk about anything? Any websites, any promotion, any stuff we should make sure people, volunteer is a clear message, I think.
Volunteer. Habitatcr.org, habitatcr.org. Just go to the website and look up volunteer. Donate your time. Donate. If you can't volunteer, please donate your money. I mean, we need to buy materials all day, every day, If you can't do that, help us with your service. If you are a printer, help us print materials or information for our home buyers. If you're an architect, help us design stuff. If you're a carpenter, help us build stuff. Just help us do the things we need to do. Our organization is a social services agency, financial services agency, retail. It is a construction company. We are a many things. So we need everybody to gather around, just help figure out the stuff we need to do to make sure that our community is safely housed in spaces that's not going to make them sick.
Yeah. So definitely have that. Definitely should be volunteering. I have a million things to talk to you about, and we've already gone an hour. I have so much I want to follow up with you. I think you're amazing. I think that your organization is amazing. And now you just have my mind spinning. I've got some things that I got to talk to you about. And I hope everyone out there, I hope you see that too. What would you like to take us out with, Vicki?
Stand boldly in your truth every day.
Stand boldly in your truth. And I certainly can't improve on that. So I'm going to take us out, everyone, every damn day at 2 p.m. Tomorrow, it's a special edition, at least from my perspective, because I'll be the one getting drilled, I guess. And all day tomorrow, 10 a.m. to 1 a.m., we will have We Are the Fledge, a marathon fundraiser. I published the schedule a little bit earlier on the Facebook event and LinkedIn and Twitter. So go check out the schedule. There's tons of really good artists. Our friend Ruckus from Ruckus Ramen is going to be spinning at about 10 p.m. MY is going to be taking us out at midnight. And we got a special edition of 99 Problems, But a Pitch Ain't One happening at 11 p.m. tomorrow night. So all you people that sleep all day, you can come check it out. So thank you so very much, Vicki.
Thank you.
Everyone, we will see you later. Bye-bye.